afternoon. Calling this meeting to order this afternoon in order to determine the quorum. Since some of us are calling in and others are present, a college board member by name, if you will, just please say here so we can make sure that we have a quorum. Mr. Smith?
Here.
Mr. Hall?
Here.
Mr. George?
Here.
Ms. Burns?
Here.
And myself, Cindy Fontana's here. We now have enough to determine that we have a quorum. We're now calling this meeting to order. If we could all please rise at this time, say the Pledge of Allegiance. Ms. Burns? Ms. Burns, will you please lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. At this time, board members, we need to make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
I make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Mr. Smith has made the motion. We need a second.
I'll second. That Burns.
Ms. Burns is seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Mr. George? Thank you. Any opposed? All right, so moved. At this time, we're moving into the information agenda part of our meeting. Dr. Akins, I believe that is your turn.
Yes, ma'am. Trying to bring up the slide presentation. Madam Chair, members of the board, you should have in your emails a copy of the presentation that we were going to try to show. And I just need to present. And I've also asked Dr. Lee, our Director of Secondary, to just be here as part of this. Some of this work was what she and Angela Sakasis, our high school instructional coach, along with Amy Pridgeon, our middle school instructional coach, have been working to put together. We wanted to kind of give the board a quick update of what has been going on in regards to the new social studies standards and share our vision or considerations for some next steps for our school. Real quick, the new standards for all K-12 social studies courses were approved back on February 4th by the State Board of Education. These were just the standards themselves, not any of the supporting documentation. The standards are the very broad level of what they imagine students being able to do at the end of the course. So while the standards have been available since the 4th, none of the additional information that our teachers really need to be able to move forward was voted on until most recently. We'll kind of try to share a little bit how they're organized, but the main thing is that each of the courses, kindergarten through 8th grade, and then obviously when you get to high school, they break down more specifically American history, world history, and so forth. They are organized based on lenses or themes. That is not new. That is a carryover that's been in existence for a while. In yellow, you see the 2010, they have typically divided up these courses in things like history, geography, environmental literacy, civics, some very broad social studies themes. That's not new. With the latest adoption, they added a new lens, which is called inquiry, which based on what DPI has put forward, is designed to try to get students to engage with documents and create their own opinions and use critical thinking. So that's the one new lens or theme in the standards that have been in existence. Did want to note that there's been a lot of talk about the new economics and personal finance course. That is now one of the courses that will be required for graduation for incoming students. Just want to note its lenses or strains are a little bit different. That's very specific to that particular course. We have some examples if the board wants to see kind of what these things look like visually. So here's what DPI now has finally approved. So the standards were approved back on the 4th. Those are the most broad level of what students are supposed to do. In June for kindergarten through 5th grade, and then most recently in late July for 6th through 12th, they approved the following three. And these are links, the board can feel free to kind of pull these up and see the exact details. The unpacking documents are one of the things that our teachers most needed and of course just got. Those provide a lot of exact details and guidance on what the standard is supposed to be driving at, what the objectives are, what is it students are supposed to be doing, and they give examples of some of the topics that can be used. It's a little bit more meat to the standards at the broadest thing.
Dr. Aiken,
Yes, sir.
is there anything that shows like a side-by-side of what has changed?
Yes, sir.
That would be a simpler way so the public can understand it easily.
Yes, sir. Jump to a couple standards. So, the unpacking documents, that's the one that walks them through kind of what they're supposed to know. To your question, sir, here's an example of a crosswalk. So I just pulled one from second grade, where they provide teachers in the community what the old one was, the overall focus, and then what they do is they find the same new number. Sometimes you'll see it's very, very similar. Sometimes they've kept the number, but you'll see the wording being very different. It's just however DPI's kind of done it. And then they'll provide the new objectives, if there were old objectives, and then anything they've incorporated in this one.
Is there a way that we could post this on our website?
Yes, sir, the link we can put, yes, sir. We
The
can put
public
those-
is very interested to see.
That is very easily done, sir.
So-
Yes, sir. And then, now the one thing this is just how we get them, the community and the board will see that from grade to grade, the exact same thing looks different because whoever worked on it at DPI for whatever grade level, they don't always use the exact same template. So an example would be, here's the 8th grade one. It's a slightly different format. So you still see the old standard, what the focus was, the new one, the new objectives, and then if anything was posted. The high school ones look a little bit different, it doesn't?
So DPI are the ones that have come up with these changes,
Yes, sir.
and agree or not, this is what's presented, and that's why I say, so if the public can see side by side what the people in Raleigh have dictated that we do here,
Yes, sir.
I think it'll answer a lot of questions.
We can definitely make sure that it's available to the public, and make it easier for them to find.
Some printed copies of it would probably be a good idea also.
We can make that happen, that is definitely possible. So, the other thing that I think is really important is bringing up Mr. Hall, there is a normal process to this. Every 10 years, we do go through curriculum revisions. Typically, that is a 2 to 3 year process, where in the first year, they would get adopted. We would have a year to review them with our staff, make changes to guidance, look at any new materials we may need to buy to help our teachers implement the new standards. Then year 2, we would actually start implementing the new information. If there's an EOC or state test, you do a pilot, and it wouldn't be till year 3, you would do a full-out implementation. We're being asked to take approved documents in July and try to implement them 1 month later in August. I will say there are no state assessments attached to any social studies. Think back a while ago, we used to have U.S. history, we even used to have civics tests. All of those EOCs are gone. The professional development the DPI is offering actually doesn't start till August. You see it goes into September and October with ongoing throughout the rest of this year. So even the professional development that those who wrote it are intending to follow does not start for another month. So based on that, what we're proposing is something a little bit more to the normal timeline. This is an example of some work that Dr. Lee and her team have already started. So what we would like to do first is work with our staff to go through those comparisons of the old standards and the new standards and try to help our teachers through that process. Then we would like to work with our teachers and principals to look at what are some current resources that work and what are some new ones we might need to make it happen. That again would be the normal process. Then we would spend time revising any assessments that we have as a district, update our pacing guides, create example units, give our teachers enough to really make this happen, and then work with our schools at the district and school level. This is the approach we would like to take with all of our grade levels, K-12. So A couple additional things that I would want the board to be aware of. Not only we have these approved, however, we have two bills in the General Assembly, both would indicate some potential changes to the standards that were just adopted. So one is Senate Bill 654, which covers a lot of things, but in it is specific language that would actually direct school systems to not implement for another year. We don't know whether that'll end up happening or not. We also have HB 324, which covers the issue of how schools approach some of the topics, not only in the curriculum area in regards to equity, but it even talks about HR hiring practices, professional development. So school systems, including us, are stuck in this sort of limbo where we have a state board that's approved standards, but we know there are bills in place that would tell us then not to follow those standards for at least a year. So what we've been looking forward to is actually doing what we would normally do. Use 21-22 to really learn the standards, use our teachers to help guide what do we need to do, how can we help them implement this stuff, look at what new materials we might need to buy or revise, share with stakeholders what we've come up with, and then look to 21-22 for full implementation. There are a number of standards that haven't changed, that are still there. We would keep teaching those standards the way we have been. But as far as full implementation, until we can get the professional development from those who wrote it, and until we have greater guidance from the General Assembly of what they would like LEAs to do, it really puts us kind of in a place where we're not sure where to go. We would like to spend the year studying it, doing the professional development, having our folks attend the work with DPI, come back, share what they're learning with our staffs, work with our schools, K-12, and then look to 22-23 for full implementation, which is still a year ahead of what the normal process would be. But we would like to look at that before we go any further, because this information just came out 2 weeks ago. And even DPI is not planning on providing us any training until next month.
Now, just to clarify, did you say that DPI though is wanting us to implement this at the beginning of the school year, but they're not gonna provide training until
The same
the same period of time? And do we have the ability to, you were mentioning several times about, waiting a year before implementing anything. Do we have that ability, or do we have to implement based on this?
There is a lot that is not new, and what we would encourage is continuing with those standards that are already in place, and that we would be following those parts of it. The things that are brand new to our staffs, it seems, I think, unfair to the teachers to ask them to implement a new standard they've never been trained on. There's a lot of it they already do know, and our recommendation would be certainly to continue forward with those standards that have been in place, aren't new, and we're already in a good place to move forward with. So, there you go.
And I believe it, I mean, history is history, but I think my concern with this is that we've got a DPI and the state board that has voted on this in such a partisan way that it really is shocking that they're wanting this to be implemented so quickly. It's kind of like, go ahead and hurry up and take it before you actually realize what the ingredients are. And if I were to go to a restaurant, I'd want to take the time to look over the menu before making a quick decision. And something as important as our children's education, especially learning the history, which should not be controversial, I feel like is even more important than ordering something off a menu. So I personally would like for us as a system to make sure that we know what we're teaching and know what's being presented to our students, especially if it's going to pit one group of students against another and cause more controversies than what's needed.
I concur with Mr. Smith on that. I think that we do need to tap the brake on this. It just seems very rushed, and usually something that's very rushed doesn't turn out all that well, and I would rather err on the side of caution on this and definitely slow it down.
I think it's fair to say we would like to have the opportunity to really investigate what's new. The things we've been teaching that have been in place, we're comfortable with those. We have the resources for those. It's any of the new stuff that we're.
And the other concern, you said there's not going to be a standardized test for history, is that right?
Correct, sir.
So is it my understanding then that the standardized test then, will it be established by we as a district, or will it be established by the individual teacher themselves? How will that work?
That is a great question. So as of right now, there is no state assessment attached to any of these courses, and we're not being told there will be. What we have used are our teachers come together and create common assessments. So even if you're a history teacher at Pender High School, and I'm a history teacher at Heidi Trask, we get them together and try to come up on agreed assessments. That way we can just see across the district. We would propose continuing that model. That way we have some way of, as a district, tracking how are the kids doing with the curriculum. And we have a lot of those in place already. Actually, to Dr. Lee and her team's credit, we have that in place for almost every single high school course. But we're not prepared at all based on the new ones because we just got them. So that we would be guessing at this point if we tried to create some common assessments that our teachers could utilize across the district. So another reason why, our teachers have put a lot of work into working across schools to build these. The ones we have are good. I'd like to keep using those and give them time to do a good job again. If we did anything right now, they'd be guessing at what the question should be.
Well, you don't want to put all that pressure on one particular teacher trying to design something, because then history's history, of course, but if, like the old saying, you can slant it and paint it any different way you want to, so.
Yes, sir. So that's sort of where we are at this point. We're waiting for more information. Obviously, we're paying very close attention to what happens in Raleigh as far as switching gears and suddenly telling us we can't touch it for a year, or what the future may hold. But this seems to give our teachers the best structure. I think it gives us time to wait for what that looks like, and I think it rewards the work that has been done. So this is where we kind of like to go, is pause it, put the brakes on it, as Vern said, do what we're doing well right now, and give us time to vet the new stuff, and give General Assembly time to decide what it wants to do.
So, Dr. Akins, one suggestion I do have is that as we go through this year and we're trying to figure out how this is going to play out and start talking with teachers, do you think at some of our board meetings, maybe just a couple of times this coming year, that actual teachers could come from these grade levels also? I know we have central office people and directors and instructional specialists that do that, but I think it would help too to hear it from teachers, how they see this playing out in their schools and their curriculum and their lesson plans and such like that. I think it would help all five of us. I mean, like I said, I have a background in education where I've been pretty familiar with the curriculum and how things change and all that. But for five of us who are chosen to help guide a lot of these things, I think it's very important that we have that knowledge also of how this curriculum is going to look. You understand what I'm saying? Like in an actual classroom.
Yes, ma'am. I think it's a great suggestion. We can definitely make that happen.
Okay, I just think that would help all of us, because I've been out for a while, and I just think it would help refresh me also with all of that too, with the curriculum aspect.
Absolutely. No, I think it's a great idea. We can definitely make that happen.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Anyone else? Anybody else? Mr. George, did you have anything to say?
No, I just agree with Mr. Smith and Ms. Burns. I'd like to hold off with what the ingredient are. That's it.
Okay. Mr. Hall, you feel good?
Good with it.
Okay. All right, thank you, Dr. Akins.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, at this time, I think we're now moving into the consent agenda part of the meeting. Board members, you should have had time to look over the items being presented in the consent agenda. Basically, from what I understand, we just have to make a motion and a second and vote on approving the consent agenda as presented, unless you guys have any questions or concerns. Are there any questions or concerns at this time? Okay. If not, do we have someone who'd like to make a motion?
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
All right, Mr. Smith has made the motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, I think I heard Mr. Hall, I heard Mr. Smith, I heard Ms. Burns, and Mr. George, correct?
Correct.
Correct.
All right, so moved. At this time, we're now moving into the action agenda part of the meeting. Item 6.1, action for Apex purchase. Dr. Akins, it's you again.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Coming before the board to request approval of our Apex renewal. The Apex learning system has been in place for a while. It allows for both initial credit and credit recovery. It's probably more known for its work with credit recovery. This would serve students both at the middle school, all three traditional high schools, and also be a part of our work with the Pender Innovative Learning Academy. I do have Dr. Lee and Ms. Winstead here to be able to answer any questions. I know some information was shared earlier, so you'll be able to answer anything that we can. It is for 3 years rather than just the one, and I believe Mr. McPherson's had a chance to take a look at it. So glad to answer any questions regarding Apex that I can, or my experts.
Did we ever get the answer key situation fixed with that?
Yes, ma'am, I sent you an email, so answer key, and I wanna just clarify, the answer key for the test or for the actual, study guides? I know that study guides, yes, ma'am, I have those available, the study guides.
And I know that there's usually okay, the study guides, that's
The
fine.
study guides and the practice problems come with the answer key. I sent the practice, but I just got back today, and so I'll get the study guides.
Yes, ma'am, thank you, I appreciate that.
Any other questions or concerns? This is why I asked to have it moved to action items, because I knew that some of us still had questions or concerns due to
My
the
concern is, and I'm going to take up the vote, because my understanding is Addendum has purchased Apex, and after the ordeal we had last year with virtual Addendum, for my constituent and students that I would never again vote for something with Addendum involved. So of those, you know.
Yep.
What is the alternative if this does not pass today for some reason? What is the alternative to this?
So we actually did meet with 5 other vendors, and I can let Ms. Winstead kind of share the work and the results from those conversations.
So I met with, I'll just go ahead and tell you the people we met with. Pearson, Edgenuity, K-12, Connections Academy, which is owned by Pearson, and Panorama Education. So I met with each one of them, and I met with each one of them twice. And the reasons for meeting with them twice was because when I went into the meeting to ask questions about the learning management system for the students and control, like for the county, they all lack. So there's like a criteria that, like, I wanted to make sure that they can meet each of these right here, because with, and I know with Addendum and Apex, they're kind of merging, but not this year. But with one of the things I'll just say with the Addendum and everything, making sure, I'm gonna go down this little list here that, thank you. So one of the things that was really important is to make sure that we're able to monitor student progress. And so with each one of them, and I can tell you each one of them because I met with them so many times and drilled them, what some of the issues were with them. So all of them had like a database and everything that you can use, but making sure that we could have accessibility to our students and to see their progress. Not all of them offered that. They didn't all offer it where we could go in and I can see the pacing updates and I can see what the grades are. Some of it offered just like, okay, here's your screen, but you can't see like what the students are doing. They don't offer, all of them don't offer the student view. So what that means is, so if a parent logs in, or if I log in as administrator, I'm able to log in as the student and able to see exactly what's wrong with the issue or whatever the question is. I'm able to also add a coach for the students. And so whether that's like someone from EC or if that's a tutor, they're able also to log in with that same view and be able to help out. So there's certain things that are very important for us to be able to access, to make sure that we have that. And I know those top vendors, they all didn't have that. They were all lacking, or we didn't have control. And one of the key things that I feel like is really important is that we need to be able to have access to our students' information. We need to be able to adjust when we need to curriculum. Like, we have to be able to differentiate their instruction as needed. And the other ones did not necessarily allow that ability to be able to do that. And so that's why there was 2 meetings. So like when I initially went in and I asked questions, or their learning management system, so like the parent portal, which is really key for parents to be able to see and access, they didn't have it. And so one of them came back, and I don't wanna.
No, you don't have to say.
Okay, so yeah, so when we met with them again, then they were able, well, I can switch over to this right here, but they themselves had not been using that system, which would have caused like more issues for me, that they were willing to switch to like a similar LMS platform that the other vendor was using, but they themselves had not been using that prior. So to me, that's an issue, that you're willing to switch to a LMS that you haven't been using initially. And so really, and can I read out just some of the key things that I thought were really important? So, able to monitor student progress, the parent portal, being able to have synchronous and asynchronous lessons, engagement, so the way that the student engaged with the program, send and receive emails and tracking through the platform. So that's really vital, that you have a platform that has everything in-house. So like if the teacher sends out anything or anyone sends anything, I myself can see what they've sent, and I'm able to track and look over what they've been doing. So that was like really important as well. Able to access view as a student, I've already explained that why that's important. Able to add the coaches, whether that's someone from EC or if that's a tutor, a teacher. Able to adjust to meet our students' needs, that's just critical that we be able to do that. Able to view student pacing, also very critical to know like exactly where the student should be, and be able to help guide them to get there. Able to monitor their activities, so being able to go in and look at, okay, today they completed this right here. They logged on at this time and they got off at this time and they completed 3 or 4 activities. That was really important. And of course, like looking at our data, that's really important. So be able to review, to be able to run like weekly reports to see how things are going, be able to monitor, like all of that is key. Enrollment was another key. So enrollment, being able to get the kids in quickly, that's really crucial. So not having to go through like 40 lines something to get the kids in. We need to be able to get them in very quick with like 10 lines or less. Services, making sure that they offer some kind of services outside of what we offer too. And the rigor, that was something that was important. And also the cost. So all of those things were like things that I asked them, and for every one of them I had to have a second meeting. And I do have all the information that I collected from each one of them.
Does Edmentum plan on changing the Apex format at all?
No, from what I've been told, and they're more than willing to come in and speak with anyone. What I've been told, that they're not making any changes this year, and actually the whole purpose of them getting with the Apex is to be able to utilize some of their resources. Like, so if anyone just used Apex knows how user-friendly it is, and so they want to be able to enhance they want to be able to pull that all over. So they're not looking to change it. They actually are inquiring it because of the success that they have. Like Apex is used very widely in Wade County and Guilford County and things like that.
So this contract would be for just 1 year?
No, she said 3.
3 years. Okay, so we've got 1 year of Apex staying the same, and then 2 years of.
And like I said, I mean, I don't know what their changes are gonna be, but I know that they said that nothing is happening right now. Like, I know that the deal still hasn't closed. Like, I've spent time with them. Dr. Aiken and I have also spoken to them as well, like when we heard that there was, the merger was happening. So we also spoke to them about it as well. But from what I understand, and this is totally my opinion, but like, I think that if they do it right, then it'll be a fabulous thing, because Apex has a lot to offer, Edmentum, and Edmentum has a lot that they can offer. I think the combination, if done correctly, would be an asset and, something that we could use.
And we could certainly change it if the board is more comfortable with a 1 year with Apex. When we originally were preparing this, our understanding, we didn't know about this change, and we thought we were working with Apex only. We have had a very good relationship with Apex. It has been a wonderful asset. So when originally moving forward, we didn't know that there was this merger. We thought we were working with Apex only. But that's a better solution to just go to a 1 year. I don't imagine Apex would have an issue with that.
When you were having discussions with Apex, some of the concerns that maybe some of the board members had that maybe have been brought to you, were you able to address that with them in the negotiation process to see if they could handle that?
So, when Mr. Winston and I talked with Apex, we've not had, in terms of the Apex product, to my knowledge, ever any complaints. When they told us about this merger with Addendum, I did share with the Apex folks the things that we had encountered in the fall and my concerns and fears, especially talking about any potential changes in the platform, who's merging who, and trying to understand that. So the Apex staff that we talked to were very aware of the concerns that we had from last fall. We've not talked with them about more than just sharing what their new partners, sort of the frustrations we had with them. Apex itself, we've never had any complaints on that I'm aware of.
And I would say in the fall, what happened with Addendum, I mean, they definitely were not prepared to handle the numbers that they got in, and there was definitely a crash. But prior to that, the year before, we did really well. We had graduates out of it, and in the spring, we did really well once the problem was fixed. And the problem was really their LMS that they were using, that's the learning management system for the students. It could not, it was not capable of holding that number of students. So when they got in like 15,000 from one county, it shut down the system, and they made that decision to immediately switch to the platform that they're on now, which has been great. And like, we've not had any issues with it. Like, it's been working well with the LMS. The LMS they're using now is called Genius, and they were using Maestro before. It's really user friendly. Like I said, in the spring, we had no issues with anyone getting enrolled or getting in their classes or being able to access it. Everything has went really well.
Is there a penalty if we were to approve Apex today? Is there a penalty if we find out that this is not going to truly be all the bells and whistles that they're presenting, and it's more of something else? Is there a penalty of getting out of this contract if we're agreeing to 3 years and after 6 months we say this is a disaster?
Well, you can certainly terminate it at any point in time. I mean, that's an element of it. The practical implications of terminating mid-year is you will lose the portion of which you've already paid for that year, because it's done on a year-to-year. And so the idea being that it's a 3-year contract, but you guys don't actually commit to the year until you approve it gets back in front of you again, is the way it's been structured from my side of the shop, is you guys see it again the next year.
It's kind of like you're locked in to that price for 3 years,
Exactly.
but if at the end of a year you decide, okay.
It's more like a 1-year contract with 2 1-year options.
Okay, I understand.
That's the manner in which, and to be candid with everyone on this board, as far as I know, and all of my notes on Apex, I've not heard complaints about Apex. It is the merger with Addendum that is the concern. Which I did have that conversation with Charles.
Okay.
I know it's more of a 1-year contract with 2 1-year options. So.
Thank you. I'm good.
Well, knowing this, that it's going to stay the same for the coming year, I'm willing to make a motion. Request to renew Apex Learning subscription, pending legal review, for a total of $184,770.
All right, Ms. Burns has made the motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Mr. Smith seconding. All in favor? I'm gonna call around the room if that's okay, since I'm there and I can't see people, can't really hear. I'm just gonna call out your names. Is that okay? So Mr. Hall,
No.
Mr. George,
No.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Ms. Burns.
Yes.
So since it's a tie, I have to break the tie, and I just do not feel, the more I read about it and looked at it, I just don't feel comfortable, so my answer is no. Okay,
I have,
this time moving,
well, can I ask the question while Dr. Aiken is still up?
yeah.
Okay, since we're, this just got voted down and we're about to start school, what's the game plan then?
Well, I guess my first question would be, would the board be more comfortable with a one-year contract with Apex? If that's not, something the board would really wanna look at, my next thought would be that, Ms. Winstead and I and Dr. Lee would need to go back to possible vendors to look at providing, especially the credit recovery option, which is something that's been very important. So we would need to go back and investigate some options for our students. Our long-term goal is obviously, in working with Dr. Blumenwright, and we eventually had to have our own teachers doing this, but we're not structurally ready for that right now. That was one of the things, sort of a 3-year, we roll out Canvas this year, which is the new student management system, train our teachers, have them develop courses, but that's gonna take a fair amount of time. So we will need to either bring these 5 back in or try to find some others, although I believe these 5 are pretty much it, for the most part. But we will have to restart that process immediately and come back to the board with some
Or we're
options.
gonna have to work strategically with our high schools on their master schedules to work in some credit recovery classes that the teachers can teach. And I don't know if they have that space within their master schedules or the time, but we have to find a way to allow these students to recover those courses, because if not, they are gonna be at risk of graduating on time. So that's just an option as well. But we're gonna have to do some quick planning and some strategic planning with our principals with their master schedules to offer summer credit recovery courses, especially for our ELC courses.
Well, and we also have some homebound students that use Apex
Yes, ma'am.
courses
Yes.
also for credit.
So we're gonna have to find the staff to fulfill what Apex has been doing along with, the regular course offerings, so.
And with Pender Innovative Learning Academy, because that's been the primary source with our teachers, facilitating them and doing breakout small groups. We're gonna be out of a resource at this point too for our students. A major part of what we do is credit recovery and then the initial credit classes with the teachers in there supporting them.
The motion that was voted down that Ms. Burns made was for a 3-year, 1-year, contract and, 1 year for 2 times to be renewed optional. Is a possibility if, and it might be the same vote, but is a possibility then that anyone would like to make a motion then that it's just a straight 1-year contract?
Can we do that at a special meeting?
Well, but do we know how much a 1-year contract might be? Because that might be more expensive than the 3-year option that we were presented.
So, board, one of the things you could do is you could ask Dr. Aiken to explore the 1-year option, and come back. And you may have to have another, special call meeting, unless Dr. Aiken feels like he can get it done. And you could table this item until after closed session and potentially return to it. I don't know what the board's comfort level with that is.
That'll require an agenda change, correct?
Well, no, it wouldn't require an agenda change, you would just simply table it.
I mean, we voted on the item, so it's time to go. That's all I'm saying.
And I agree with Mr. Hall, I'm just asking a question, if it can be done this way, so that way because it sounds like to me that our staff and central office folks are feeling like they're, on the train tracks and they're, we're trying to find a way that the train doesn't actually hit them. So that's all I want to do is try to do, find a solution, but I'm willing to table it if they are.
But you need 3 days to have another meeting, so
Correct.
we could do this again on Thursday or Friday.
48 hours. Yeah.
We'll make the calls, if that's something that the board is
Yeah, and
good with, I'll make the calls.
yeah, and I'm definitely willing to do that. It just with all the problems we had, it just makes me nervous to say, well, they told us that it won't be like that, but how do we really know? And what we went through this past year with Edmonton was a complete, talk about a disaster. It was just one thing after another. If it had just been a few people, they would have been one thing, but it was constant concerns. And it may have just been because of the numbers of people who went virtual. I don't know, but we've got to make sure that we know that we're going to be okay if we do this. And I'm not comfortable with that. I don't mind turning around and coming back if we have to change and do it in 3 days. I have no problem getting on and hearing what we have and let's, make a motion in a second and vote on it then. But we just have to be really careful with this one.
When does our current contract with Apex end?
August first?
August maybe 19th, it's somewhere in August, I don't know the exact date.
Okay, thank
Right
you.
before it starts.
I'm willing to have a special call-in meeting Friday if the other board members are willing to do so, but if everyone's completely against it, then I don't want to waste anyone's time.
We could even do it Thursday, couldn't we? Just later than this, because you gotta have 48 hours.
That's correct.
We're glad to start making phone calls as soon as I'm done, and Ms. Winstead can step out, we've got the numbers. They had provided the current one as a 1 year, so we have a starting place. I don't think it would take very long for them to email us for Mr. McPherson to look at a revised 1 year option for just next year.
I would be available for
I am too. I'm available. That's fine. Mr. George, did you hear that?
Yes, that's good.
Okay. All right. Any other questions or concerns? All right. Moving on to item 6.2, modular classroom purchase. Mr. LaFont.
Good afternoon, board members. We recently sent out a RFQ for the purchase of a modular classroom to house the Pender Innovative Learning Academy. That process has been completed, and I'm seeking the approval of the board to approve modular technologies for this in the amount of $492,512.
All right. Do we have any questions or concerns for Mr. LaFawn first? Okay. We have a board member be willing to make a motion, please.
I make a motion that we purchase a modular classroom in the amount of $492,512. Pending legal review.
Ms. Burns has made the motion. Do we have a second? Do we have a second?
I'll second it, Don.
All right, Mr. Hall is seconded. All in favor? I'll call around the room. Mr. Smith?
No.
Mr. George?
No.
Was that a yes or no? I couldn't hear.
No.
Mr. Hall?
No.
Ms. Burns?
Yes.
Okay. So I understood there were 3 no's and 1 yes. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Was that correct?
That is correct, Madam Chair.
Okay, so it did not follow through.
Thank you.
All right. So this time we're moving on to item 7, comments from board members. Mr. George, you have any comments?
Not at this time, maybe after question.
Okay. Mr. Smith?
I'd like to reserve for after closed session.
Mr. Hall?
Same thing.
Ms. Burns?
No comment.
Okay, now I have no comments at this time. Dr. Hill, report from the superintendent.
Nothing at this time, ma'am.
Okay. At this time, we need someone to make the motion to go into closed session.
Pender County Board of Education will enter closed session subject to advice from the attorney pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143-318, 11A1 and A6 to prevent the disclosure of confidential personnel information under General Statute 115C319 to consider matters relating to initial employment and the individual employee. The board will also go into closed session pursuant to General Statute 143-318, 11A3 to consult with the board's attorney in order to preserve the attorney-client privilege to consider confidential student matters and provided by the North Carolina General Statute 143-318, 11A1 and the Family Educational Right and Privacy Act of 20 USC 1232G and North Carolina General Statute 115C402.
All right, Mr. Smith has made the motion to go in closed session. Do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Hall is seconding. All in favor? Ms. Burns?
Aye.
Mr. George?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Uh,
Mr. Hall?
Aye, and that was, Mr. George that made the second.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. Y'all sounded familiar on the phone. Doesn't say the same. All right, so at this time, we are now going into closed session.
more research on it and understanding some of the language of it, and I need to rescind my vote of the negative.
So what Mr. Smith is asking for, Madam Chair, is to reconsider the item, and because he is on the prevailing side of that vote, he made a motion to reconsider the item, that the motion that was put forward regarding the modular units. Correct me where I'm wrong, Mr. Smith.
You're correct, sir.
Okay.
All right, so Mr. Smith has made a motion to reconsider that. Do we have to get a second and vote on that also?
Yes, ma'am, you do, Madam Chair.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Ms. Burns is seconding. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay. So talking about that, I'm guessing that we're now going to make a motion at this time considering that, or do we have to make another one, or we're just good to go on that?
Yes, ma'am, you're now, the item is back on the table. You can entertain motions regarding the modular unit.
So who would like to make a motion at this time?
Ms. Burns, I think you had the information, dollar amount. Would you like to remake your motion from earlier?
Okay, I would like to make a motion that we approve the modular classroom purchase for Pender Innovative Learning Academy in the amount of $492,512, pending legal approval.
I'd
All
like
right,
to-
Ms. Burns has made the motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Mr. Smith is seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
All right, so that's 3, 4, and 1 opposed. Is that correct?
That's correct, Madam Chair.
Okay. All right, this time we're moving on to the action item of the Human Resource Report and Addendum. Do we have someone who would like to make that motion in approval of the report and addendum?
I'll make a motion that we approve it.
Mr. Hall's made the motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, Ms. Burns is seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 Second.
Any opposed? All right, so carried. All right, and it looks like at this time, we're now, because board members had made reference to the fact they would make comments after we came back from closed session. So at this time, I'm going to start with Ms. Burns.
No comment right now. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, Mr. Hall,
I don't have any, thank you.
Mr. George,
No, madam.
okay, and Mr. Smith.
Yes, I'd like to make a comment. The comment I'd like to make,
Okay.
Madam Chair, is that we are currently still in North Carolina under a state of emergency that's been declared by Governor Roy Cooper, and he has executive orders that have been issued. Many of those executive orders go against my personal opinions, but that in itself is just personal. There's other residents in my district that have reached out to me about those type of executive orders that seem to have been abusive of power. If you feel like that is the case, I encourage you to call Governor Cooper's office at 919-814-2000. Again, I'd encourage you to reach out to the governor at 919-814-2000. Thank you.
Thank you. The only thing that I will say is that I completely concur with what Mr. Smith said, and I believe that all of us do at this time also. Dr. Hill, did you have anything else you'd like to say?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Well, if there's nothing else that needs to be said at this time, do we have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I've got one more thing. We've got a
yes,
statement
sir.
written that it's my understanding we're gonna put out to the public. Did I misunderstand something here, or is that correct? In writing?
A resolution, is that correct?
Yes.
Is that what you're talking about?
So, Madam Chair,
Actually, I thought we were going to announce right now. I mean,
That's
why
what
I have a
that was
comment.
what my understanding was as well.
Madam Chair, I think Mr. Hall is asking to be recognized to share a statement prepared on behalf of the board.
Oh, yes, sorry, go ahead.
So I did not do
Sorry.
this during
Sorry,
public
you're right.
comment time because this is not my comment, this is from the whole board. Which means, so is this really a resolution? Is that what this would be? No?
No, sir.
So,
It's a statement on behalf of the board.
okay, so this statement that we're gonna put out, which I hope we can also put out in writing somewhere. Let's be clear, this is on behalf of the board. So I'm gonna start and say, okay, yes, this is on behalf of the board. Ms. Burns, do you agree?
I do.
Okay, Mr. Smith
That's unanimous, I agree.
and Ms. Fontana and Mr. George, so we're all on the same page here?
Yes,
Okay. All right, because we've all five agreed to this statement, so we're gonna, I guess, publicize this. Mr. Riley, how can we do this, on the website, or,
It can be placed on the website, social media.
and we'll also read it here?
Yep.
And I've got this in writing, so I'll send it to you, so you'll have it, so it'll be the same thing that we say. So the statement will be, and this will be what will be posted in public, the Pender County Board of Education adheres to the belief that parents should have choice when it comes to the use of masks for our students. However, due to state law, we do not have the authority to lift this mask mandate. We encourage our citizens to contact their state elected officials in regard to Senate Bill 173. Again, that's Senate Bill 173. And otherwise, like I say, we will have that posted so the public can see it, probably on our website. And I don't think I've forgotten anything. Does anyone have anything else to add to that? If not, Ms. Fontana, thank you.
no, thank you, I'm sorry, I thought that was going to be said during the comments, sorry about that. Thank you, though, I appreciate that. All right, if no one else has anything else to say at this time, do we have a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Smith made the motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Was that Mr. Hall or Mr.
Yes.
George? Mr. Hall? Okay. All right, it's been seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, so moved. Thank you.